There we go. All
Okay.
right, here we are. Well, welcome to Jason's Thoughts. Another special guest this week, and I'm super pumped because this lady I work with each and every day in a virtual world. So, welcome to Jason's Thoughts, Tiffany. I'm super happy to have you on.
I am so excited to be here and to talk to you in a different capacity. Like you said, we talk pretty much all day long in supporting,
Yes.
our business, and it's pretty cool to be here talking about a new
Yeah.
topic.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And I know you have one queued up for us that we're going to kind of unpack, but I think for my 50 subscribers, I think it's really important to know about how we met. And From my recollection, I mean, obviously we work in the same company, but I definitely remember you on a lot of phone calls, big national calls, but our first time meeting together, I still feel like when we got some really good one time was at a restaurant. I'm not sure if that's your same recollection, but that's how I recall.
Yeah, it's in and around the same time. Like I remember meeting you at a work conference,
Yeah.
and something about your energy. I was meeting a
Mm,
lot of people, to your point, right? Like I was meeting a whole bunch of salespeople that I'd met and that I was really eager to talk to face to face. But
yeah.
definitely, you always stuck out in my mind. And I think probably beyond that point became one of my go-tos if I had questions or needed to understand something. So
Yeah.
really
Yep.
appreciated that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think even from afar, I would say the exact same thing. You always used to resonate to me as a someone that was super positive when he presented, but also beyond the presentation too. And even though we hadn't maybe met face to face yet, still felt that connection from afar. And and then we all kind of changed a little bit and morphed. And then I guess now it's been 9 or 10 months working like really really close together in the
Really
same
appreciate it.
same channel. So man, I mean definitely got to say on this on my show for sure is that I got to thank you so much for like I talked about my learning path and change many times on other videos and how difficult it can be and giving yourself some time, but you were always side by side arm in arm through all my onboarding. So certainly have to call out how amazing you were as from afar, but and now up close, absolutely amazing. So I think that to me is just formed such a great partnership relationship, and can't thank you enough. So
Oh, you're so welcome. Scary on my side too, right? Somebody else is
mm,
coming in to kind of take over my legacy, if you will, and support the team. And when I heard it was you, every ounce of fear dripped away. I was just incredibly excited
oh,
to have you come on board.
okay,
I knew it was going to be such a smooth, positive transition, and it has.
yeah,
It's been a pleasure to watch you step in and
thank
come
you,
into your own.
thank you, thank you. Well, it's definitely I've had some learning, and I've been pretty stale for a really long time on the learning, but I exponentially it just continues to grow, and so it's a lot to do with you. So that makes me really happy that we've made time for today's chat. And so um, with that, yeah, what did you want to talk about today? I think we had thrown something out there, but lead the
Yeah,
way.
I've been pondering something a lot lately, and it's been around maybe career path and the journey, kind of where you get to. I love analogies. So as I was kind of thinking back around, you know, thinking back to the early days, right? You come out of college. Well, first you decide what you want to do when you grow up, right? And it feels like
Yeah,
such a big decision. And then you go into your schooling, you dedicate years, and in my case, to marketing. I am a marketer when I came out. And, to look at where I am now, which is not terribly far removed, but certainly not in marketing. it's kind of
Mhm.
curious how it came about. And I think there's a lot of people that come out thinking, wow, like I came into school, I'm a marketer. So my end goal, therefore, is to be the VP of marketing, right? And well, what's the
Yeah.
shortest path I can get there? And where the analogy comes in is I like to think of it really as, a mountain, and you've
Mm.
got base camps. And very
Yeah.
rarely, I don't know, I don't climb mountains, but very rarely I expect do you go straight up a mountain to the top, right? There's,
Yeah. Yeah.
valleys and peaks and really rocky
Yeah.
territory where you kind of have to wind your way around through each base camp. And you know, I think for some people, they start dead set on the top and they get there,
Mm.
they organize, they've got the right equipment, they stay on that path. And then I think for others like myself, you get to a base camp and you go, hey, I really like the view from here. This really suits me. Or
Mm.
maybe I'll go to the next one, or maybe I'll take another winding path. So it has not been very straight for me.
Yeah. 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 That's and I think I love, kind of that straight line. Like I think especially coming out of schooling, university, what have you, like, you get that piece of paper that says this is it, like boom, and it kind of propels you through that line. But I like certainly love the analogy. I do climb a lot of mountains, and I can definitely tell you a lot of the times you hit a path and you're like, whoa, that that's extreme. I didn't bring the right gear. I gotta take a right or take a left or
Yeah.
detour. So I love that analogy, but I also love the analogy of, you're at a base camp and it's a great view, right? Like you may not be at the peak of where you want to get to, um, in your journey, to that end goal that you envision yourself at, but there's a lot of great views, and sometimes taking the time, and in this analogy, like gaining those experiences in that role, have huge amounts of value, and sometimes you can stay there longer and still feel quite comfortable. So very cool. I love that analogy, and I love that conversation. So my question for you would be like, what did your career path look like?
Well, I think I had some what I'd like to call starter foundational roles.
Mm.
And in each one of them, it was loosely tied to marketing. There were smaller companies, but it's where really I learned to drop some of my entitlement. You learn the basics.
Mm.
You learn that you have to roll up your sleeves, and you learn that just because you're in marketing doesn't mean that there's not a lot of other things that come into play that you're going to have to do. And so, I kind of worked my way through that, kind of learning different skills along the way. And then, I'm a bit of a lifer, which is not something that anybody can, really say these days. It's very
Hmm.
feels like the environment is a lot different where people are kind of hopping through different
Yeah.
companies. But I've been with the same one for 15 years now, and
Yes.
what's really kept it alive for me is being able to kind of grow with the company and kind of find those pivots,
Yeah.
and move into different roles, see the business from different sides, but also everything you've learned you bring with you, and you kind of grow whatever role you're stepping into. So that's been really cool for me.
Nice, nice.
Yeah,
Equally a lifer.
yeah,
We've both been around for quite some time. Some may call us relics or dinosaurs, or the
yeah,
names go on and on. But
yeah.
did you ever find in your journey? It sounds like, probably some. Well, you talked about learning and learned entitlement.
Yeah.
But did you ever feel like in your journey on your mountain that you did hit like a dead end or roadblock that got you stuck for a while?
Yeah, absolutely. And in reflection, like I can remember being in those moments and the feels that you get, right? Like you just like, okay, well that's it then. Obviously if that isn't the path I'm going to get, or maybe you got passed up for a promotion, which is typically in my case what it would have been. You're not always able to see why you're not ready, or the bigger picture when you're younger. And it felt like it took forever for me to kind of find my way. It's because I was so focused on, well, obviously that title is the next step. And so I've been doing this for 3, 4, 5 years. And so obviously when that becomes vacant, it's me. Who else could it be? And it wasn't until I really kind of stepped back and started to understand kind of the suitability of the role and the function that, I took a long, hard look at what would that take and where do I have opportunities. But I think that comes with age and experience, a little bit of tenure, and kind of building those connections to look at it from a couple different angles.
Yeah. I think I connect with so many points on that one, but I wouldn't say I was necessarily like, because I didn't go to school. I mean, I went to college for art.
Yeah.
So
I've seen your art. It's pretty impressive.
Well, thank you. But there's not necessarily a defined career path, right? So I didn't really, and I dropped out, so that didn't help either. But I didn't come out with kind of that thought of here's my path, right? But I guess, but again, like when you kind of have that schooling, and then you're like you have that goal, and you start looking at the years ticking by, and then not maybe getting to where you had a goal of. Tell me, like, how did you cope with, like, it sounds like you wanted to get to the next level or get that promotion or whatever, and you might have had some rejection in those roles. Correct me if I'm wrong. How did it sounds like you did do some self-reflection in some of that. And did that change kind of like that clock watching to say, hey, I should be here?
It kind of bought me some time, I would say. I'm not going to say I handled every one of those disappointments as maturely as I'd like to pretend I did. There were some times along the path where I had to sit on it for a couple of days and be disgruntled and, really look myself in the mirror and ask, like, are you going to let this derail everything that you built? And you kind of almost take inventory of what you have, right? Like I have these contacts. Everything that I've built up is not taken away from me. It's not like I didn't get this promotion and therefore you have zero worth. Yeah. Which is the story you kind of tell yourself at first, right?
Yes.
And in my case, I'm very thankful that I always chose to kind of dust myself off and get back to the business of being a rock star at whatever I did, and trust that was going to come through. Now, in my case, it really helped because some of the people that did get the roles were so clearly beyond and so clearly somebody that I could learn from, that it was pretty easy for me to kind of say, okay, this actually feels really good. And so,
nice.
I have the opportunity to grow under those leaders, and, eventually you're ready and they support you with that.
Yeah, 100%. I talked about, I've worked with a lot of people over a lot of years, and, call it a mentorship hat or not. I've experienced a lot of people's rejection along with my own. And I too got, could get down in the dumps about myself and lose a little bit of self-confidence. But one of the things I got through a lot of those experience was like, rejection doesn't, necessarily mean, it wasn't your time. Well, it does mean it's not your time, but it's just not your time now, right? Like, I'll share with you my story because
Please.
I was a bit of a floater. I was a bit of a base camp viewer. Like, me, I'm kind of like, ooh, this is a beautiful scenery.
Yeah.
I will stay here for the next 8 years of my life and not skip a beat because I kind
And
of
that's
chill.
okay, right?
Yeah, it is okay. But there was one point I was a store manager for many many years. I think 8 off the top of my head, and I was really successful. And I had a fantastic regional manager that kind of propped me up. Like he made me better than I was, and he ended up getting promoted. And then I took on this acting role as a regional manager while running my own store because for whatever reason it wasn't like, okay, like let's post this job and go get it. And so I got put in this acting role, which I'll share my thoughts on that in a minute. But so I had like 15 stores, some in Vancouver, some in Vancouver Island where I am, but I had to stay in my store and run my store. Weren't very, virtual world was not very common. Video wasn't very common. Long story short, I was doing that for about 9 months. And then all of a sudden, director at the time's like, okay, the posting's going up. And I'm like, woo,
It's
okay,
mine.
sweet. It's mine. I've been here 9 months. And then and this is literally on a Friday. We're in a meeting, and I was like, "Ooh, he didn't even tell me this was coming up." Yes, tells me the posting's going up, and then he says, "And it's going to be based out of Vancouver," which geographically, I live on Vancouver Island. No, it's not a suburb of Vancouver. It's a 2-hour ferry away, and I was like, "What?" I've been very notoriously known to not move. And this is nothing you don't know me as that. I'm always moving now, but I
Yeah.
was very notorious, stuck on a rock. And so I put my application in. I'm like, how am I going to convince my wife that we need to move to the place I don't ever want to move to? Um, and then and he was the director was going away on vacation or whatever. Anyways, long story short, I had some time to think about it, and I'm like, man, I can't do this. I can't move. I can't move my family. I can't move my kids. I hate Vancouver. No offense, Vancouver. And I backed out. I backed out, knowing that someone's going to get it. And I knew the names that were on the list, and lo and behold, I had a new boss. 9 months of time in this acting role. But similar to your story, I was definitely down in the dumps. I was pretty disappointed. This was kind of my dream job at the time that I thought, this is it. This is where I want to go. This is my next base camp, and took a long time. Right, like it took me a long, long time to kind of get myself back up in gear. But just like you, it's kind of like, okay, just maybe not my time. A little bit of self-sabotage because I pulled my name out of the hat. And in reflection, maybe that was a little bit of protection, but it did allow me to go, you know what, I was really crappy at that job. I really was. I did a lot of things wrong, made a lot of mistakes. It was like, and I learned also too how I was getting directed wasn't necessarily great either. I was so rookie that I was taking everything in and going, rather than having a plan. And the reason I share it is because, again, our career paths can be so all over the place. And at first it felt like a letdown that I was like halfway up the rock, and then I had to traverse because
Back down to the last base
I
camp.
was scared.
And
Yeah,
you probably
yeah.
said goodbye, everybody. I'm going to the next base camp.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and a couple years later, um, got the next opportunity, and I was so ready. Took all that time to go, hey, I'm at this base camp, and I've already kind of the view. I know the view. I'm tired of the view, so now I'm going to start refining what I learned in those 9 months and get better and better and better within my safety net of this base camp, got stronger, got more gear, got more experience. And then when the next opportunity came up, there was no denying me. I was going to get to the next base camp. And so I think that rejection has a lot of power once we get over ourselves, to go, hey, it's okay. Like, as you said, I loved your rock star. Like, dust this off. You know, sometimes people are fueled by like proving why they made the wrong decision, but I just like the self-reflection. It's a really good thing, and it makes us stronger from it for sure.
It's really 2020, right? You look back and you go, okay, that all makes sense now when I play it back. And
Yeah.
one of the things I love about this topic is, now supporting people that may have had some of my earlier mindsets around entitlement or what the next path should be. And I love that I can actually kind of guide them with my own experiences, and I know how that feels. And, just today, I had a conversation with somebody that said, I don't know how to answer the question, what's your 5-year plan?
Mm-hmm.
That's so much.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 5-year plan, right? Like it's a
Yep.
favorite question. And I
Yes.
myself have never been someone that can answer that question. I'm so very much in the moment. And perhaps I am very much in the moment because I've learned through some of my disappointments to focus on where you are. But what I
Yeah.
did get really good at is understanding where my strengths are and
Yeah.
seeing almost the path on where I need to go, where there may be some gaps in the business, and how
Yeah.
I start walking down a different path. And maybe it's not formal. Maybe it doesn't come
Yeah.
with a title. Maybe it doesn't come with the money, but trusting that, going that way and just feeling really good at something and having others see the value, eventually it comes to pass. So,
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
coaching I've been giving out to my people.
Yeah, it's really good. It sounds like multipliers. If you've ever heard of Liz Wiseman, she's written a couple books, and it sounds, if you're not aware of it, it sounds like you're a multiplier, which I definitely encourage you to check out. Check it out because it's really cool. It's like where you see something and it's broken, where someone or you see an opportunity and nobody's touching it, but you're like, hey, let me go make this better, and like,
Yeah.
let's make it better and fix it up, and that also brings in some new skill sets. So very cool. So I guess one thing that I think about is like, when we talk about career paths, what's your thoughts on like lateral changes? So here you are with this beautiful view in this base camp, but and the long-term goal is still to get to the peak, but what about a lateral walk over to this base camp that might have a different view? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it all depends on perspective. I
Hmm.
obviously think lateral moves, because some of my best moves have been lateral, are
Love it.
incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
But I don't think it nets the same return in the same amount of time, right? So,
Yeah.
being somewhere 15 years and I'm now probably going into a fourth kind of profile or function for the
Yeah.
business, I there's so much value in the contacts that you build and the strengths that you grow and what you can bring with you, that it kind of just keeps growing. It's like a
Love,
snowball, just kind of
love it.
gaining and growing and getting bigger. And so by the time you get to the end, everything I feel doesn't come terrifically easy, but comes a lot easier because you've
Yeah.
amassed all of this experience, this wealth of knowledge. You become a go-to. People know you in the
Love
company,
it.
right? And you
Yeah.
become one of those players
Yeah.
that, you know, just it can navigate any situation. Uh, so,
That
I
is true of
I
you.
love that that's kind of become my MO, if you will.
Yeah.
Um, so I only would have got that by kind of switching things up. And sometimes they're small changes. Sometimes it's,
Yeah.
hey, you're just picking up a part of something and adding it into the mix. And sometimes it's a net new change. It's been incredibly valuable in my career. I
Yeah.
think you need a little bit of patience sometimes with it too, because there's a perception, right?
Yep. Yeah. I think you've like we've had this visual of a mountain that we've been talking about right now, and following that lateral movement, but you nailed it right on the head. It's not the same camp, right? And so you're actually kind of going towards you're still going up, because as you said, it's new experiences, it's maybe new groups, it's new connections, it's new learnings. So maybe the title feels lateral, but as you've shifted, you're actually putting yourself in a better position for the next base camp up, which I think, as again, as this we have this visual, I can really see it as you're talking about it, and how actually, okay, no, it's maybe like a different path, um and it's like a little bit smoother than the direct line up, but it's still going to get you up to your next base camp upwards versus lateral. So I really love that analogy.
You just got to take stock of what there's an incredible amount of value in
Yeah.
going laterally. It's new contacts. It's a new opportunity to show people what kind of a rock star you are, right? You amass those
Hmm.
fans around the table. And I
Yeah.
think, you're only investing in yourself and learning different skills. Sometimes
Yeah.
it might feel uncomfortable as any kind of change, lateral or up, there's, as you
Yeah.
can attest to, right? There's a lot of things you got to
Yeah.
learn, but
Absolutely.
it's
Yeah.
all, when you have the vantage point of looking back and seeing how it
Yep.
really, how your bank account has grown,
Yeah.
it's really
Yeah.
satisfying.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, in reflection, I think about my career, and I do agree with you. I made a lateral move before I got into the regional manager role, where I did get out of my comfort zone. I was taking on a different role that had a whole bunch of people I didn't even know existed. Um, you know, I only had like 9 months there, but I felt like I was making an impact. And then, came with new skill sets that gave me the edge over other people, because they were just in that one role. They didn't do any changes. And even as you said, yeah, like I mean, this last year, I've been in my previous role in one shape or form, different teams and stuff like that, for like 10 years. So for the first 2 years, I learned a hell of a lot. For the last eight, managed the business, and did what I did. But until this last year, like, which again was a lateral move, I hadn't really, sharpened my blade. I hadn't really gained any new skill sets, because I was kind of cookie cutter in that role. Wouldn't say I mastered it necessarily, but I certainly wasn't growing, necessarily as much as I'd like to. So yeah, that's. I think that it stresses the importance of. I think a lot of times we're trying to go straight up, but don't overlook those lateral ones, because those might be the ones that actually give you some really really strong edge, and development. I mean, not just edge, but just really give you some new skill sets, put you above the other competitor, right?
You're always going to get ahead if you're open. Go with the flow,
Yeah.
right? Like analogy time again. Like you think if you're like kind of swimming against rapids, eh,
Yeah.
think of how much energy you're going to expend trying to go in a straight line against the rapids. You're going to get so much
Yeah.
further ahead if you're kind of going with the flow of the water, right? And so
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of merit there.
Nice. Love it. Love it. So, in all your infinite wisdom, Tiffany, like, for what would you say is the biggest learning or takeaway, or words of wisdom that you would say when kind of someone's mapping out their career path, or Let's start there. What's your biggest words of wisdom?
I've heard this when I asked these questions in the past, and, I didn't really understand it. Just truly find your passion. Find,
Mm,
what
mhm,
gives you the tingles. What do you feel really good at, right? So you're never going to falter if you find that, you own it, you invest in it, and you follow it. That is
mm,
absolutely the one thing that I wish if I could go back to the start and say, actually, you know what? When people say that, that's real. You should really, really pay attention to that because there's so much value. It's
yeah,
hard, I think, for a lot of people to see it and own it.
yeah,
So, I
yeah,
think as a people leader,
yeah.
helping them see it and own it, everything else is gravy. It all comes easy.
Hmm.
What about you?
Yeah. Well, I'll dovetail off that because I love the passion portion of it. And because I think that we also have to, like you say that, but a lot of us get our heads in the ground and heads down and just plugging away. That I think a lot of times, if you ask someone what they're passionate about, they might not be able to pull it right out of their head, right off the hat. And so I want to double click on the passion part because you got to make time to figure it out what it is you like, right? So, okay, here it is. Like, you've got 10 years experience, 5 years experience, mark it down, pros, cons, what you love, what you don't love, and, start marking it down. And I think when you look at the things that you love or that you're passionate about, you'll probably see some groupings in there that kind of connect together, that will probably help guide you to realize maybe you actually just completely love what you do, and that gives you some contentment, or it gives you a perspective of like, okay, I'm maybe not there with my passion project or my exact dream goal that gives me X, Y, and Z in my passion chart, but I think we always have to make time to really look at it and really dissect, because for me, I can get very comfortable in the moment, and I think sometimes that's what slows me down. I'm not, as I said, I don't, I can sit at any base camp and find the greatness in anything of the
Yep.
view, but I think that I would I think if I spent a little bit more time there, I could have developed a little bit further and quicker. But I didn't really self-identify. I just went, "Hey, this is cool. I love leading people, and I love making sales, and I love people growing." So I think it's a really important one to really think about, because you can also, your passion, though, whatever you're passionate about, it can make you comfortable because you're like, hey, everything around here, I super love, and couldn't get any better than this, and that could potentially be your happy place where you say, this is my Mount Everest, this is the peak, um, or you go, it is my passion right now, but I seek more, right? I seek a bigger step. So
Well, and I think it's important not to make passion so big.
yeah, yeah,
Like, passion doesn't have to be, I'm passionate about this role.
yeah,
Passion can be, I'm passionate about talking to people or
yes,
leading recognition programs, or putting together decks or analyzing data. There can be
yeah,
small kind of micro passions that help
yeah,
you figure it out, right? And in that way, it's almost, to what you were saying, easier to explore things. Put your hand up, say, hey, I really I did this project. It felt really good. Like when I finished it, I felt like, I really added
yes,
value and I'd like to try that out more. It
love
can
it.
be simple as that, right? So
Yep, yep.
explore the passions, even if they're small, it's actually probably easier to test it out.
Yeah, yeah. It could be those small little things that in that moment you said, this made my heart really warm, right? It felt really good. Or you had that day where you finish your day and you're glowing, right? You have that glow and you're like, what did I do today to make that glow? And that's probably your passion. And then you can go, hey, let me explore a little bit further on where I can take this. It might only be 10% or 5% of daily role, but hold on to that, right? Make time to explore that and figure it out and see how you can leverage that in your career path for sure. I mean, I think, the adage is like, you never work a day in your life if you love what you do. I think it completely reigns true if you find your passion. Absolutely.
And I've always found a cheat code is just paying attention. You and I
Mm,
both have things that we're working on that we procrastinate on. There may be the things that don't come as easy to us, or we're not in the right headspace for. What's
yes.
the thing that you go to still be productive and keep busy? That's your
Yeah.
comfort zone, right?
Yeah.
Maybe not
Yeah.
your passion, but it's certainly something to explore.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I think probably over the last year, it's felt like about 80% in the weeds, and but obviously, as you know, I'm in my passion zone right now, and getting to that place. So it might not always be right there in the moment of that new role too, is what I would call out. Um, but that you'll get there eventually, right? So it might not feel like it right away, but that's also your learning, right? You got to give yourself some time to learn and figure it out what you're doing in the day to day, and then don't get lost in the stress of, because your brain's like, ooh, it's moving again. It's a muscle, right? It's like, oh wow,
Right.
I'm working again, and it might lose that. Oh yeah, there is a lot of my passion is here. It's just I have to get through all this learning curve too. So yeah. Well, I feel like this has been a really awesome chat. I mean, Tiff, again, we talk so much day to day. You're such an amazing human, and so I really hope they had a lot of fun today, and that potentially you might come back sometime. It would be
Yeah,
amazing.
I love that. It was a good conversation that actually kind of helped me remember some of the things
Mhm.
that, maybe I haven't thought about in a while and I can put back on the shelf.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely bubbled my thoughts up and my passions back up, and again, just taking this time to connect in a different way and talk about that is just so good for the soul, right? Because a lot of times, again, we don't make time and we just keep our head down and don't reflect on the things that we really love, where our career path is going, what we're really passionate about. So hopefully our listeners got a lot of good gold from you. I'm sure I did, so I'm sure they will as well.
Oh,
And please, Tiffany, it would be amazing to have you back anytime. You're always welcome.
amazing. We'll talk about it tomorrow many times.
We certainly will. Thank you so much, Tiff, and I
Thank
can't
you.
wait to have you back on.
Take
Take care.
care. Bye.
Bye.